Hello, everyone. We are three Black Pratt grads. I'm Marc Skinner. I'm here with my good friends Kenneth Nelson and Greg Cleghorn. And as you probably know, if you're watching this for more than the first time, every couple of weeks or every week, we have a discussion about photography. This particular evening, we're going to be discussing positively negative. Now, it's not negative as in a piece of film that's been photographed and processed, but negative meaning negative space. It's basically how does negative space affect the composition of a photograph? So it's positively negative.
Like subscribing.
And
What does subscribing to our channel do for people? It's a wonderful experience.
oh,
And then
and
they
yeah,
hit that
you
bell,
get to as
they,
soon as
they
yeah,
get reminded when a new
it's,
episode is
yep, as soon as a new episode's there, boom, you get a notification.
up.
All right, Kim, if
Subscribe.
you'd be close to post first photo, that'd be great.
Yeah, I think you may need to sort of preface negative space to those who are. I mean, although you've given an explanation of negative space, I think it requires just a little
A
bit further
little bit more.
detail.
I was going to use the visual aid.
Okay, all righty, good. All right, then
Visual
in
aid.
that case, there you
It's
go.
time for a visual aid.
There you go. Okay. Now,
Where'd you
the
get
first
that
photo
picture from? Is that yours?
is a landscape that I photographed at the Brooklyn Botanical Garden, and I specifically photographed that as inspiration. It was inspiration that I
Ooh.
got from you guys. And yes, the original image is a square, and it was done with a camera, not a cell phone. And I did have the intention to create a black and white image and look at the different levels of gray that I would see. Now, negative space is the part of a photograph that tends, in most photographs, tends to be what we used to call base plus fog or white space sometimes. And in this particular photograph, it's represented by the clouds. The clouds would be the negative space. And if I had photographed this on a day where the sky was all blue or all gray, it would change it completely. But the fact that the negative
Did you say,
space
I'm sorry, I don't mean to
delineated.
interrupt, but did you say base plus fog?
Mhm. Now, base plus fog, when you're talking about film and creating a photograph on a uh, piece of paper, as opposed
Yeah.
to a digital image. With a digital image, it's the absence of density. Thanks, Greg, for pointing that out.
Yeah, because
I
that's
I
important
got
because
so
you can,
enamored with black and white image that I had forgotten that it wasn't a scanned print. So basically,
yeah,
what you
because
do is
that can
you
also change the print in your negative space. Because if you pre-fog an image, it's going to change the image.
that is true. That is true.
Did you
But usually,
explain to what fogging is? Yeah, I don't know that phrase just jumps
well,
out of nowhere.
well, when I say base plus fog, I mean that there is a little bit of density, and as you see in the clouds in this image, there is a little bit of density. It's not quite the same white as the border that I've created for this. Now, in this image, you see a variety of grays, and you see that the tree, it looks like it has no or very little foliage on the lower part of the tree, is the sort of the pure black part of the image. And therefore, everything else is sort of uh, in relief to that. It's a silhouette study. So that tree is in silhouette. The leaves are different shades of gray. The foliage behind it is a little bit lighter because the sunlight peeks through and illuminates the fronts of those bits of foliage that are behind the tree. And then the clouds, in this particular case, are in a position where they are forming sort of a really amorphous shape, but it's an amorphous shape that you're not likely to see at ground level in New York City.
Where were you when you shot? I don't understand that. You won't see that at
Well,
ground
this
level in New York.
Well, I said that in the beginning that this was in the Brooklyn Botanical Garden.
Uh-huh. That's
So
New York.
it's part of the landscape that's there.
Okay.
We can go on to the next one.
Wow. Big jump. From,
Unless Ken has something to say.
huh? From very
No,
This
no,
one
go
would
ahead.
be
clear
a
to
little.
very rigid.
Go ahead.
Now I went to this photograph because this is a little bit easier to grasp the idea of negative space. In a photograph like this, you have the buildings and you have the bridge. Together, they are the positive spaces in the image. The fact that the cables are very light, they look like negative space, and the side of the bridge that's light, that's also negative space. And they literally help delineate the bridge, and they help separate the bridge from the sky and from the two buildings. And so as much as we feel that we are looking at a bridge, we're also looking at the highlights, the negative space that's created by where the sun is hitting the bridge.
Is that the would that make it negative space? Well, because for me,
Well, the
when I'm
idea,
looking at this, for me, the negative space is the chunks of the clouds, you know, that those big
well, we're looking at the
swaths.
bridge photo now.
Yes, yes.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Right, and you're correct. The big chunks of clouds are the
Did I say
negative space
clouds?
in.
Big chunks of sky. Did I say clouds? Sorry about that.
Well, those are really light gray, and they can also be interpreted as negative space. That also help. But the truly negative space would be the cables themselves. Those are that's the negative space.
Let's see. Okay. All right.
Yeah, well, okay. So if we're looking at and my concern comes with, uh, remember when you took three-dimensional design or 3D
Oh, I
in
was going to
class,
bring that up.
right? And so what we were taught to do was to say, for instance, create a three-dimensional area, and then what you were supposed to do is sculpt the area by using the positive space to create the negative space.
Mhm.
And so you'd pour your clay or your whatever it is, plaster,
Mold, yeah,
your
plaster.
mold,
Build
your
it in
plaster into
clay.
a mold, which would
Right.
create the positive space. And then once you've broken the mold and open up your three-dimensional design, the negative space would automatically appear once you've broken it and created the positive space. So the negative space is everything that is not occupied. Well, I'm sorry, you're right. By those terms, the negative space is everything that doesn't have anything occupying it.
That space, right. I had this my form in space, or form in waste, they used
Form
to
and
call it,
space.
but
That was the name of the class. Yeah.
form in space. Our instructor told us to build the air.
Build the
And I was
air.
like, what?
Right. And what you're talking about is the fact that the way we perceive the world, the sky is considered the negative space. But in
Not all the
actuality,
time.
right, in this particular image, that's what I'm saying.
Oh,
But
okay.
in actuality, in actuality, the negative space in this image, because it's a two-dimensional image. I mean, it helps us understand what a three-dimensional space looks like. It represents it. But in actuality, the true negative space really here would be those cables. If you were to reduce this to 3 shades of gray and black, if you were to create just a medium gray for the sky, a dark gray or even black for the parts of the bridge that are not hit with the sunlight and the buildings, and then just white for where those cables are, you would see that the negative space actually are the cables.
Okay, right. So to be clear, there are two sets of cables we're looking at. One are the vertical cables, and the other are the horizontal cables. Are you talking
Right
about
now,
both?
obviously the suspension, right? The obviously the long sloping cables that go from the spire to off behind the buildings. Yes.
Okay.
Not so much the vertical ones, but the ones that are diagonally arcing out of the frame.
Okay. And why exactly are they negative space? If there's density there?
Yeah, I'm not getting that either.
Well, it's a two-dimensional image.
Right.
So it's the negative space that delineates the bridge from the sky and the bridge from the buildings. We understand that arch to be a bridge because of that negative space that's created by the cables. Particularly those 4 cables that go from the top of the bridge to the right side of the frame.
Okay.
If you were to reduce this image to just 3 colors, white, gray, and black, you could make the buildings black, you could make the sky gray, you could make the bridge also black, with the exception of those cables.
Right.
That negative space would be the space that renders as a bridge for us.
Okay. All right. So we have to visualize that using this as a reference point instead of seeing the actual reference.
Yeah, that's
Right.
not the way
Now,
I see negative
because
space,
but
okay.
right, I know what you're saying. You're saying that the sky is negative space because there's nothing there. It renders as we perceive it to be negative space because there's actually nothing. But in actuality, there's density. There's blue.
Yeah,
Right, right.
But on the flip side of that, you could say the buildings are the negative space too, because they're this big chunk of space in the composition. When I learned is, compositionally, there are your dominant, subdominant, tertiaries. But then when you talk about
Right, but I'm
positive and negative space, for me, that's the way I see positive and negative space. It's just different than yours, and you see positive and negative space the way you do. So this is
now
your
had
limit,
this been an overcast. No, but here's the thing: had this been an overcast day, and I had photographed this image on an overcast day, and you didn't see such a highlight on those cables, and they were all rendered as their actual color or as a darker color than the sky, then in that case, the sky would be negative space. Because on an
So
overcast, sky is white.
Okay, I don't see how that relates to this image.
That's being wedged.
yeah. Okay. So within a two-dimensional surface, I understand we're talking about a two-dimensional object. So when we reference a two-dimensional object, you're now saying, or you're saying that the lightest thing or the thing that comes closest to white on any photograph is the negative space, no matter how dark that white is.
That's what it sounds like he's saying.
Not in every case. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say, let's say we were photographing a person in a room and they were very bright and the room was dark. I wouldn't say that they were the negative space.
Okay, right. So something that's middle
Right.
gray, being the brightest thing on a two-dimensional surface, would not necessarily be considered negative space if there was no surface area within that middle gray.
Well, in all honesty, I would say that if you took the cables away and you just had that stanchion in the middle with the arch, and then you had the 2 buildings on either side, then you had the sky.
Yeah.
I would say that the sky is negative space, and it would be easy to say, well, there's density, there's image, there's everything that renders as something in the middle and 2 buildings on either side.
Okay.
But I think in this particular case, because those cables, when reduced to, I remember in school, one of the things they said is that a thumbnail, if your image works as a thumbnail or is in black and white. Perhaps I should have rendered this as a black and white image for this. It'll most certainly work in color because the composition is right.
And you found that to be true?
I found that to be true, particularly when there's a planned photograph. A lot of the studio things I do that I do now, I kind of plan them out first, and I get the kind of the composition together first, and then I actually take the photograph and try to match the dummy that I've created for myself. I think I mentioned that in one of the really early discussions we had.
Okay.
We'll have to retouch on that one because that's kind of vague to me. But did we beat this dead horse? Or are we good? Is there more?
Well, I think in all honesty, we should probably go on to someone else's photos.
Yep.
So I think Greg is next.
Yep.
Greg, yay. Positively negative. Nice topic. I kind of like the idea behind it. If I am on the right target, could you like throw the thinking behind this again, Mark?
Well, I think in this case, the clouds very easily fall into the category, and to a certain extent, some of the lines that are on the road. But for all intents and purposes, let's say the clouds. The clouds help define the entire composition of your landscape.
Okay. Well, that was important. That's why.
Certainly add to the depth.
Sorry, say again.
I said they certainly add to the depth.
It does. That cloud kind of danced with me for about an hour before it just disappeared over that hill. Positive and negative space, like Ken was talking in the form and space class, where you have to build things in ceramic and then make a plaster mold out of it. But what was mind bending, there were two like major events. Excuse me, probably more. I think it was like three. But the first one was when I was in drawing class, and I'm not an illustrator by no means, but I suffered and struggled through that class long enough till one morning, it was like late, fallish, and the light was coming through a certain way. I've probably told the story 100 times already, but bear with me. But I saw, depth through the light, and I was able to capture it on paper. And it surprised the hell out of my instructor, and it surprised the hell out of me too, because I wasn't thinking that I would be able to see like that. I thought that was beyond me, like an illustrator's eye. But I was able to see spatially and the darks and lights, and how darks and lights created, the depth and your positive and negative spaces. And usually what they said was like the positive spaces usually jump forward and the negative spaces kind of recede. Sometimes true, not always. But, again, with the design elements, your primary, it could be abstract. It doesn't have to have a primary and secondary, tertiary focus. But positive and negative space, for me, it changed when I had to build the negative space, And then, visually, and then in the visual arts, for me, I feel like, especially with digital and everything, like the game has changed quite a bit. With this image, I like the mass of the chunks. I kept it wide so that I could get that chunk of gray in the back, and the lines, the leading lines of the road is a negative space, So I mean, depending on where the viewer is, if they've done a road trip or they like getting out into the mountains or whatever, they're going to see different things as the negative space. So I just kind of leave it open to interpretation. And for this one, I wanted to show that not just the um, the design elements of primary, tertiary, secondary, third, tertiary, primary. You know what I'm saying? 1, 2, 3. That can change with color. Change that. Flip that over, Mr. Nelson. See, and for me, this one is like a completely different image, just because the adding the color to it. Um, the if you like red, that ochre uh, of the West, Utah, Idaho area, you start seeing the reds in the ground. Now, is that the positive or is that the negative space? I mean, is the ground the positive space or is the sky the negative space? I just like to put these elements out there and let them do what they do. I just love the saturation of the natural color of that ochre color out there. It's just phenomenal. And then this puffy white cloud just kind of hanging out, and then this deep, I swear that out that Utah way and the high plateau that they talk about, it's like you could almost look and the sky looks darn near black. It's so blue. It's beautiful. But that's what I wanted to say about positive and negative spaces. I mean, I have some blatant ones coming up next. Go ahead, pop that next one in there, Ken. Unless you guys want to say it, like this, because there's so much. For me, the negative space would be that gray panel on the right and that dark space behind the cowboy. And even though you have these dominant large spaces, for me, they become a negative space because my you know mind wants to focus on the cowboy, or the gentleman in
The
the
cowboy
western.
sign in the rack.
I'm sorry.
The cowboy, the neon sign, and the rack on the left. I think the photograph that you created is all about those three elements. And then there's that that spot all the way in the back that really just helps define that space. I mean, there's nothing there, but it actually defines the black space.
Yeah, yeah. That light at the very back is what you're saying, or the neon light.
Well, oddly enough, the neon also, the neon sign, the cowboy, and the racks, they define the tunnel.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, yes, right. Right, right. But is a design element, and is a design element using negative space. You can draw attention to what you want to be the primary element, in your image design. It's a tool. We're not trying to talk about rocket science. Um, excuse me. Negative space can lead the eye to something that you want to tell the story. Visually or any number of uses. Negative spaces. It's a good tool to know, and when you can see it or it's in your query and it's in your you know Rolodex. Oh, I know. If it's in your calendar of things that you can use in your photo bag, it's like, okay, oh yeah, I can use that. That's got a positive negative space. You know, so it can be used as a design element, but it's keep it up there so you can use it when it presents itself to you. And I guess lastly, I guess you could pop that last one in there. Um, I don't know. This was just a weird, wacky day. I was going out to my car. We had like forest fires fairly close by, and we got a layer of soot. And came out, and this little kid has put his hand on my car, and I thought that was, I thought it was kind of cool. Like one of those rock paintings from millennia ago. So I put my hand next to the juvenile print, and I didn't realize there was like a line going right through it, but there was like it seemed like for me, I started to see like a time, like a calendar, you know, it's kind of dark to the left, and then it gets light, and then the kid's hand is kind of fading, and then there's a line through my hand, and my hand is darker, and you know, it just visually.
Wonderful photograph.
I'm sorry.
I said, I think it's a wonderful photograph, and I think the negative space that's created by the dust that's on the hood of the car really illustrates even better than my examples exactly what I'm talking about. Because we like to think the negative space is the absence of that that ash that was there, but
Okay.
in actuality, the negative space for this photograph would be the ash itself, even though it's a photograph of ash.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, yeah, it's you know, I mean, I would hate to put a title on this from my perspective. I would really, really, for this picture, if I put that out, I would love for somebody to, you know, tell me what they see, you know, because my eye and my experience see something completely different than what it may say something completely different than.
Yeah. Now, I'm going to say something. Maybe I'm wrong, but please tell me, you know, don't be offended. It seems like there's a vignette that's been applied, or there's a vignette that is a result of the initial capture. In any event, that vignette helps define the frame as a circle a little bit more than a square, and so it's a warmer, friendlier feeling
Hmm,
when we see these hands, and we get more of a nostalgic feeling also.
yes, okay, and guilty. Yeah, I did bring that because it was flat, you know, that the gray background or the negative space was just flat all the way off the page, and it kind of drifted. For me, it was drifting. The focus was drifting out of the image, and I wanted to keep
Right.
in the image frame. So I did edit slightly.
And I love this photo because to me the real magic of the negative space in this image is from that lower left hand corner as it goes up into the little point, and it goes around under the palm of your hand, and then there's a bit of the finger print that would be missing, and so we see the negative space go into a little bit of confusion for us. We don't It doesn't read as a hand, you know, anymore, but we see the other three fingers and thumb, so we go, oh yes, yes, it's a hand. And so there's just enough ash removal from the pinky for us to go, oh, I got it. That's a hand print. And so all of that negative space, it's being defined by your hand and the vignette from the lower left to the lower right. It's just wonderful swoop. Not like your Nike hat there. Not like a wonderful swoop.
Yeah, cool. See, I like that because you see stuff that I didn't see. I didn't see some of them. I did, you know, later on. I was like, oh, that streak down the middle looks like a river, or, you know, it's like a. Anyway, it was like hands of time. You know, that's what kept popping in my head when I was looking at it. But yeah, thank you for that.
Problem. Nice
Anything you
photo.
got? Huh? You got anything, Ken? Or you good?
Only that I'm having a little bit of trouble with this, not necessarily the image itself, but just the concept that the negative space is only for the parts of an image that are brighter than the rest of it.
Not
I I
necessarily.
actually think
That's not really the case. I mean, perhaps I should have given you a nighttime photo because that's a little easier. Because Greg, in the photograph with the cowboy, and I'm sorry, I can't even cut you off. That negative space that's created by the tunnel really illustrates what I'm talking about because that defines that street scene, that big tunnel that's created. But it has a really interesting shape because at the
Can you go,
bottom of the
Ken?
square the cowboy seated, he cuts into the negative space there, and then so does the rack, that the rack of items for sale that also cuts into it. And then in the upper left-hand corner of that same square, the neon sign that says open, that cuts into it too. So
Can
the,
you go
the,
back,
the
Ken?
black space.
Ken, can you change the image?
Yeah. Oh, remove. I'm sorry. Change it or take it
To
down.
Yeah,
the
you go
to
back,
the to the
we
cowboy.
go back to
Oh.
the cowboy photo.
Yeah. Now, what were you saying, Mark?
Right, now,
The-
now in this case, the negative space. Now, Greg said he sees the negative space as the great, but in all honesty, I would say the negative space really is that tunnel for me
Okay.
in this particular instance, because where it's completely blocked up, it doesn't read as anything, and
Right.
it's the little actual items that that help delineate, that help cut out the negative space. The real interesting part of this, if this tunnel weren't here, we might find ourselves looking at just a man sitting on a bench in front of a wall and saying, okay, it's a guy in front of a wall. We've seen that a lot. I've taken photos like that. But I think the tunnel is very inviting. So it's engaging.
Mm.
You know, it says open. So, you know, should we walk into the tunnel? Should we not? But there's nothing there. So I think as our eye dances around all of that area where we can't read it, I think in this particular case, the negative space really is all the areas inside that tunnel that are black, including that silhouette all the way in the back. And it even renders as being back because I recognize the leading lines caused by the little bits of illumination.
All the way down the channel there.
Okay. All right. All right. That brings me up to okay. Yep. We're square. I understand. Yeah.
Have to be the lightest part. I don't completely agree with that, but I think just like I was saying, I mean they're
Well,
almost equally, negative in space, but I like that the gray on the outside, is there's nothing there, but in even having nothing, it kind of has character in the ribbed lines, the corrugated steel or whatever. I mean, it has character,
right.
but it's
Right.
essentially a
But
negative space for me.
Okay.
But similarly to my photo of the trees, all the way in the back, you've got that shape cut out by the silhouette. And I don't know if that's a person or a mannequin, but that shape that sort of looks like a state that we don't know. It looks like looks like something, something geographical back there. It's white. It's got that big orange line through the middle of it. There's really nothing there. But in some ways, maybe that is the negative space. Maybe I'm wrong about the black area. Maybe all the way in the back, that one little bit is what defines this photo. Because if you kind of put your thumb over it, it's not the same photo.
Interesting.
Well, I think that the leading lines are on the ceiling, which lets you go all the way to the back. There are those
Right.
lights that indicate a convergence from forward to back. So I think those, to me, lead me down the path, even absent of that white spot in the back.
Yeah, they
So I,
do. But
so I go
the
to the
fact
ceiling.
that the payoff is that there's light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, these
Yeah.
idioms go through our lives and we live them, we ingest them. So we see a tunnel, we see a gentleman very passively sitting there minding his business. Obviously, someone has wares to be sold on the other side of that opening, and then it even says open. So it's inviting, but mysterious at the same time. And we want to see what's at the end of the tunnel. Another Indian, right? Idiom, excuse me. What's at the end of the tunnel? And so we look all the way at then, and we see the light at the end of the tunnel, and that's really engaging. And I think maybe the fact that little bit of maybe that's the negative space. Maybe what I said holds true.
But I wanted that light because the tunnel was so dark. I could have taken a couple of steps to the left and cropped it out through the camera, but I wanted that light in there. The light, forgive
Now,
the colloquially.
right, Now, without,
The light at the
yeah,
end.
without putting a little strobe on the left side to illuminate what was on the right, it wouldn't have been as engaging without
Okay.
that light back there.
Yeah, I mean, even that
All
shadow
right.
front, that big chunk of shadow is a negative space for me. But okay, enough of that. That horse is dead. Come on, Ken, what you got? Or sorry, who's the monitor on this one?
All right.
You're go ahead, Mark. Do your thing.
We're egalitarian tonight. I think you, Kenneth,
Oh.
are next.
Okay.
Thanks for the
Well,
feedback, fellas. Thanks.
mhm.
Good.
You're familiar with this. If you're not, then I think I may have shown this to you guys sometime over the past.
Ooh.
Right?
Grand Canyon?
Pardon?
Grand Canyon?
Yeah. Yeah.
Nice.
So this is my take on positive and or negative space because, quite frankly, I think it's negative on negative space.
Mm.
Right? And I just think there may be a little ounce of positive, but I just think it's negative on negative space because there is nothing to engage you in terms of surface area to guide you as to define something that you know to be real uh, or identifiable. So, except a line going across a photograph to give you an inkling
A
of some,
jag?
yeah.
People who have been in that region would almost always be able to identify this, I think.
Say again? Say that again?
People who have been to that region, the South Arizona or Central Arizona or Utah, or Wyoming, all of that, they would, I think they would, even in black and white, I think they would be able to figure out where that
I,
is.
I think I think a lot of people, even if they haven't been to the American West, would definitely say, I don't know where it is, but it looks like the American West based on what I've seen on television and on the web
Uh,
in the movie.
but there's something about the Grand Canyon, man. That was the first place that I went to, and I looked across that thing, and I wanted to fly. I was like, why couldn't I be a bird at this moment? Because it's just so open, and it's beautiful to me. Sorry, go ahead, Ken.
Yeah. No, no. Go ahead, guys, because there's nothing for me to say here. I said all I needed to say
Well,
about it.
I would say that there are two magical bits of negative space here. There's of course the crescent moon. Even though there's density on the right side of the moon, just the crescent part uh, is so synonymous with the moon for us.
Mhm. Yep.
It if there's no density there, we don't care because we see a crescent placed in a frame with enough indicators that there's a landscape, like what you've done with the jagged line. It's perfect. And then the fact that there's this gradient on the left side. We all have been on the planet Earth long enough to understand that sundown or sunset, but it's certainly the sun
Could be
no
some.
longer directly above, and just on the other side of that hill. So it's very beautiful. It's very graphic. It's a photographic image. It's very much informed by graphic design, it seems. And not only that, it's very much informed by analog photography. And I don't know if this is a scanned image or if it is an originally digital image, but it has the feel, the sensitivity of an analog image where that black area it's okay for it to just be blocked up with no density whatsoever. Because as you mentioned in your original introduction, that line renders for us as a mountain range.
Yeah. True. Yep.
I like it a lot.
Okay.
As
And
minimal as it is, it's gorgeous.
yeah, it's one of my favorite images out there. Yeah, And squint your eyes for a second because the next one is the complete opposite.
Nice. Nice.
All right. So, I mean, yeah.
Thanks
So,
for the warning.
so now we're doing sort of a little bit differently. So yeah, it's negative space or positive space informed by the negative, enhanced by the negative space.
Defined by. Yeah.
I concur.
And
With a positive
the
It's
question
really
for the
nice.
viewers, I would
All of
suppose, is I guess the question for the viewers as they're viewing this is uh, which would they consider to be the main part of this image? Uh, is it the space around the positive item, or the item itself, or the space around the item, which informs the space of the item?
Well, that depends. Is this a photograph of foliage sticking out of snow?
I will not say what it is.
For
I will only offer
me,
that it is what it is. Uh, and I think you can make out what it is.
yeah. For me,
Where
it's
it
all about.
is the question.
For me, it's all
And
about.
I'm not trying to be weird. I just don't want to. Uh, yeah, I'd like people to get their own things and thoughts about it on without me telling exactly what it is.
For me, it's about the snow. The snow. It's just saying to me, it's my time. Okay. You had your season. This is my time. And that
I think that
persistent life, but not right now. You're gonna have to come back several months. This is my time. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was going to say I like this quite a bit. I'd love to see this as a pattern for I don't know, holiday wrapping or even a wallpaper instead of holiday plates. I mean, I think it has a really gentle, uh, romantic sensitivity to it. It's very nice.
It's violent. It's cold.
Hmm.
Winter will kill you.
Okay, that's all I got, guys.
Well, that is the irony of snow scenes, right? I mean, with snow scene, I'm presuming it's snow, uh, because the author of the work won't say. But
Good shot.
if we're to presume this is snow, that is one of the great ironies of snow, isn't it? Is that it can be very uncomfortable, but it looks so beautiful. But that's for another discussion.
I was on Mount Shasta just walking around. Did I tell you guys? And I'm like, oh, this is really nice. The people are up there, first snow, tra la la. I'm walking along and my legs sunk into the snow up to my thigh. Okay. And I thought about it. I was like, people like disappear. This mountain could swallow me and nobody would find me until like the thaw. So I was like, okay, I respect your authority. I got my leg out of the snow and I went home. So yeah, this is a good discussion. Thanks for this one, Mark. That was good stuff. I don't know why I told the snow story, but yeah, snow will kill you. I'm off my.
Well,
As soon as we're done with this,
I won't. Yeah, I won't.
Okay. Are we still recording? Did we lock it out? Come on. We need folks to subscribe and ring that bell so they can be notified when
Friends.
episode is popped
Greg,
up. I'm sorry.
what? Where?
Go ahead.
That's
Ken.
okay. We were wrapping up.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
Do you have
lost you
more,
for a
Ken?
second, Mark. We lost you.
I'm sorry. Do you have more, Kenneth? You have
No,
another
no,
one?
no. Go ahead. No, go ahead.
That's it. Anyone have any more to say?
Great topic. The another thing for shooters, toolkit. Learn how to see negative space. It can be a really, really, really beautiful thing. Get out there and keep shooting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. We have been and continue to be, as Greg always points out, 3 Black Pratt grads. I'm here with my good friends Greg Cleghorn and Kenneth Nelson. I'm Mark Skinner. Have a good night.